I have so many of these Flaviar samples to catch up on, so I gotta keep cranking on this as quickly as I can. Patrons, the next... I probably will do this episode, and then one more. And once I get within like 1 to 2 days of the actual current day on the Advent calendar, we'll record the next one live. Okay? So I'll hit you all up on Patreon and let you know, I'll set up a Discord call. We can all do it together. You can hop in there. We'll taste them together. If you've already tasted yours, or maybe you don't even have the Advent calendar, that's totally fine. We can just hang out together, drink some whiskey, and talk about flavors. It'll be fun. But I gotta get cranking on these things. Alright, this is number 10, vial number 10. It's 43% alcohol, so it is 86 proof here. Let's check this one out. In terms of color, it's not super light, but it's also not super dark either. Nose smells American. Not a lot of barley on the nose at all, so I'm not thinking Scotch, Japanese, Irish. Sweet vanilla, and I actually get like a candy cane note on the nose. Funny enough, like sweet mints. Some delicate oak in there. It really does smell like vanilla and candy canes to me. That is a very tannic dram right there. You don't get like that typical sweetness up front that you often get with American whiskeys. There's a sort of subtle underlying vanilla sweetness throughout all of it, but I get more tannic spice. Not a lot of spice, like, ooh, that's spicy like your peppercorns. Just a subtle spice, but mostly that tannic oak forward kind of a palate. What am I getting on that finish there? Something about that is familiar. Heavy oak presence on the finish. It almost kind of reminds me of a boo rye. That candy cane influence, I feel a little bit is heavier on the nose than on the palate. But it's still there, those same notes. Let's see what you are, number 10. That's Breckenridge, huh? That's the Breckenridge bourbon. You know, I said it reminded me of a boo rye. Breckenridge, their bourbon is a high rye mash bill. So they're an interesting distillery. I've actually been there, up at Breckenridge Distillery. I have been there myself. They boast that accolade of being the highest altitude distillery in the world. And they actually use snow melt in their products, snow melt in their whiskey, which is interesting. Now, they don't make everything in-house. A fair amount of what's in here is actually sourced, but they source high rye mash bill bourbons in order to make this blend. And so it does kind of have that boo rye kind of a vibe to it. But yeah, I said candy cane. I always, last time we had this dram on stream, because we did a bourbon whiskey tasting on stream on my other channel a few months ago, and Breckenridge was featured on that one. And we got some of those like peppermint kind of vibes off of that back then too. That's funny. But yeah, I like Breckenridge Distillery, and I've been there myself. I'd like to go back. All right, here's number 11. It says it is 40% ABV, so this is very low in proof, just 80 proof. This one's not going to knock our socks off at all. Nice light color on that. It's very sweet and delicate on the nose, like that dessert pastry kind of a vibe off this. Like a glazed donut, maybe, you know? Pound cake. Smells like pound cake. Yeah. That literally tastes like... That tastes like Jameson to me. That tastes like Jameson, straight up. That sweet barley, that shortbread kind of a vibe on that, tastes very Irish to me. But it's got some of those light, delicate, fruity notes to it too. You know, your typical like green apple and pear kind of underlying there. Not a lot of strong oak influence on that at all. That just tastes like a really super crushable Irish. Let's see what it is. The Harvest from the Irishman. Irish whiskey, 40%. Yeah, it's really chill. Combination of single malt and single pot still spirits. Walsh whiskeys set out to rediscover real Irish style whiskey as it was made 200 years ago. I mean, like I said, this really just tastes like a quintessential Irish whiskey. I mean, there's nothing about it that seems like they were trying to be adventurous or overly complex. Just a straight up homage to Irish whiskey. If I'm in the mood for Irish whiskey, though, I really prefer if those flavors are kicked up a notch, which is why my go-to Irish whiskey is Redbreast 12. But this is not bad at all. I got no qualms with this. I didn't rate Breckenridge, did I? Breckenridge is a 3 for me on the scale we've been using. 3. I don't go out of my way to buy it very often. I think I've only bought a full bottle of Breckenridge one time. but I've had it several times. I've had it pour. I've purchased a pour of it. But yeah, so that's like middle of the road for me. Nice little bourbon there. This one, this would probably be I guess this would be a 2 for me, because if I'm gonna go buy an Irish, I think there's other Irish distilleries out there that are doing just quintessential Irish whiskey, maybe executing on that a little bit more thoroughly. But just the little 40%, a little delicate, little dram. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. Number 12 has a nice color to it. It's kind of funny holding it up. This is an oak table, so sometimes I'm kind of comparing it to the finish on the oak table I have here. This is just a pure oak slab right here, an American oak. What do we got in the ABV? 47%. 94 proof. That's kind of in that... Ooh, hello. Oh. Like I was going to say, that's kind of in my sweet spot. I like a lot of... If it's not a single barrel or cask strength something, then I like it in the 90s. This is like buttery caramel on the nose. There's not a lot of spice on the nose. No peppercorns or anything like that. I almost get a little bit of that, like a raisin, dates, those darker fruits on this. Raisin coming through very strong on the nose. Very strong. And that rich butterscotch caramel. Not like your toasted caramel, more like your buttery caramel. Very smooth. I'm going to try that. The nose and the palate are not the same. That's not true. Nope. That raisin comes through in the finish. Sure enough. On the nose, I was expecting this to maybe be like a bourbon finished in maybe like a sherry cask or something like that. Palate is very different from the nose in a lot of ways. That raisin is consistent throughout though. But on the palate, that is much more malty. Very malty. Almost tastes like this tastes like if a single malt Scotch whiskey, unpeated, was first aged in virgin oak cooperage and then finished in a sherry cask. That's what that tastes like to me. I'm not saying that's what it is. It probably isn't, but that's the vibe I get on it. That sweet malt with a little bit of oak, a little bit of raisin. Tell me about yourself. It's a Lineage Texas single malt whiskey. American single malt. That's delicious. I really like that. It calls it a flavor bomb. I have to agree. I really enjoyed that experience from start to finish. Barley is a combination of Golden Promise, malted barley from Scotland, and local barley. Hey, from the Texas Plains. That's pretty cool. I like that. So I gotta say, I think I gotta rate that one pretty highly. I'm gonna give that one a 4. I would definitely buy a bottle of that if I saw that around. That's some good stuff right there. Another. Alright, so it's been several hours. I've had a meal, some time out, time with family, and I'm back at it again. So feeling refreshed. My liver is clear. Let's dive into it. I got 13 here. ABV on this is 48%. Okay, so we're looking at a 96 proof. This is a on the higher end of what we've been having here. Got a good color to it. I mean, already that has more of a caramely note than the last one. Vanilla caramel nose, a little bit of a subtle burn there. I don't know if it's the malt sticking around from the last whiskey, but I almost get a maltiness on this too. That straight up tastes like Werther's caramels. You know, like those little hard caramel candies, those Werther's that your grandma always has a bowl of. That is what that tastes like to me, straight up. A long oak finish on this one, but those just sweet, not like a deep roasty caramel, more like just a light vanilla caramel on the palate on that. That's pretty good, actually. For the proof, though, I wish there was more I could pull out of that. But it is pretty good. Normally with something that hasn't been diluted very much, there's maybe a handful of things you could pull out of it. I almost say a little bit of a tobacco note to it, too. But mainly caramel hard candies and a long oaky finish on that. Let's see what it is, huh? This is Noble Oak Rye Whiskey, 48% ABV. Tasting notes: maple, rye, spicy pepper, herbs, biscuit, cinnamon, anise, toffee. Definitely get the toffee. Man, I gotta be honest though, that does not taste like a typical rye. Oh, so this is from Noble Oak Spirits. This, one of Edrington Group's first expansions into American whiskey. That's interesting. because Edrington Group owns Highland Park and Macallan Scotch. So they definitely are a credible, source. They've got some history there. Each bottle they sell, they plant a tree. Well, how about that? It says, here's the thing, this isn't your typical rye. I could have told you that, straight up. After marinating in charred American oak for a year, Noble Oak takes its rye to the next level by finishing it with port wine cask staves. Interesting. That step gives the juice an extra layer of complexity and flavor. The result is a bold, BA, and beautifully balanced rye that plants a tree for every bottle sold. See, this actually has it very high on the spicy scale, according to them. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't get a ton of spice off this, personally. I'm having the right dram, right? 13? This is sweet caramel candies to me. I mean, I get that long oak finish, for sure. I think it's really tasty. I like it a lot. I'm not sure that the description is what I'm getting, though. But 100%, I think that's delicious. And I'd probably get a bottle of that. A 3.5, maybe a 4. 3.5 to a 4. That's quite tasty. I like that. Let's move on to 14. We're back down to 80 proof. Already way different than this. This one, it was a rye. It smelled like a bourbon to me. This one's malty, bright fruits, like plum. I get a lot of plum on the nose of this. Definitely very malty. Plum, raisin, and like dried cocoa. Let's go in on it. That's a little bit more flavor forward than I would expect for an 80 proof. Not a long finish though, and that's probably because it's only 80 proof. But lots of flavor forward on that. You definitely get that maltiness, those bright fruits that were on the nose right up front on the palate, but they do not stay long, and it really finishes just like it. To me, it finishes like a cigar. Sort of gently coats your mouth too, kind of oily in that regard. Yeah, a malty plum, burst of flavor up front, strong tobacco finish. But that finish is sort of one note, just that tobacco-y finish, that cigar finish, and that's it. Somewhat viscous, but not bad. That's actually pretty tasty. Let's find out what it is. This comes from Akashi. It's the blended Japanese whiskey. I like that bottle. That's a good looking bottle. Oop, I clicked the wrong thing there. Fruit, apricot, citrus, sweet, caramel. Yeah. Egashima Distillery, located in the town of Agashi, just a stone's throw away from Kobe Island, is molded by these elements. Here, a couple of feet from the ocean, the owner's family has been making spirits for centuries. Egashima Shuzo also holds Japan's first whiskey license, issued all the way back in 1919, but to this day remains one of the country's smallest whiskey producers. Quality over quantity is the motto. This is where we speak the same language. Interesting. Lightly peated, copper pot stilled, and matured in ex-bourbon shochu and virgin oak casks. It's a balanced, fruity, and approachable spirit. In other words, it's the perfect entry point into the wonderful world of Japanese whiskey. I think that's quite tasty. But yeah, it doesn't blow you away. There's nothing about this that's going to be offensive to your palate in any regard. But the flavors that are in there are quite appealing. Yeah, that's tasty. I like that. On to number 15. This is going to be 90 proof. Okay. Well, 90 proof. We've had some... I think this is probably one of the better sessions in terms of... So far, there hasn't been one that I strongly dislike. We've had some ones. If you've watched the previous episodes, there have been some in here that were straight up ones to me. But today's that's not been the story. So far, I think my winners of the day would be the Texas single malt, American single malt. That was delicious. I liked that a lot. Other than that, I think the Edrington's rye whiskey was quite good too. I liked that one quite a bit. Even if it didn't really taste like the things it was describing, I just thought it tasted really good. All right, number 15 here. Ooh, that nose is very green apple. Green apple, white grapes, a little subtle spice on the nose too, some peppercorns. Very light and fruity. Vibrant. Oh, that's quite nice. What am I getting on the finish there? Some green apple sweetness up front for sure. A little subtle spice there about halfway through the palate. And on the finish, like a toasty oak finish there. Very strong oak on the finish. I like that. You kind of get that bright, sweet fruit up on the front end of it, but then it ends with this sort of tannic, toasted oak kind of a vibe to it. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Today's been a good day for these whiskeys. I don't think there's been any of them that I'm like, no. You know what I'm saying? Let us see what you are. Numero 15. I like you. How would you... It wants me to compare it to the Comet Indian Single Malt Whiskey from episode 1. I would prefer this one 10 out of 10 times to that Indian Single Malt. I apologize, but that was atrocious. This is blackened American whiskey. Tell me about you. What are you? Spicy burnt oak? Yeah, 100%. 100%. But then it says apricot honey up front. Yeah, that sweet, bright fruit. Sonic finished metal whiskey in the jar O. By sonic finished, they mean that they played Metallica to the whiskey while it was aging. I kid you not. Dave Pickerel, former master distiller at Maker's Mark, made a hardcore blend of American bourbon, rye, and whiskey tucked away next to subwoofers that blast low-frequency sound waves to enhance the molecules. And every new batch of 5,000 bottles comes with a different Metallica playlist. It says, we know what you're thinking, just another rock star gimmick. Well, a 2017 study on brandy and sound aging actually says this thing works, and Metallica's whiskey in a jar O is really good. And while this blend of hand-selected, well-aged bourbons and ryes is finished with Hetfield's Madness, it's matured in black brandy casks. That's interesting. Which brings apricot notes with honey and caramel flavors to this bourbon-led mosh pit. That's funny. Hey, you gotta applaud the creativity. Honestly, you gotta applaud the creativity. That is an interesting take on whiskey. The question is, do you think it's a gimmick or not? You know, how much influence is the music actually having on the flavors of the whiskey? I'd like to know, you know, on a molecular level, sort of you're looking into the chemistry of it all, can you really detect any major differences in chemically in what's going on in the whiskey before and after you've played a lot of music to it? And can you isolate the other variables to say that it was definitely the music that caused that change? That's what I would want to know. I want to see a control group, you know, where you don't play any music to it. Same batch, same ashes, same blend, put into the exact same kind of casks, and then you do it again, and the only difference is you play music to it, and then you compare the result on a molecular level. That's what I'd want to know. Does it actually change the whiskey? At the end of the day, though, does it really matter? Does it taste good? That's the question. I think this tastes pretty good. I think that at the base level, that's a pretty good blend of some really nice whiskeys. And I think it tastes pretty good. I give it a 3. Am I going to rush out and buy a bottle off of a shelf? Probably not. But I can say that I had whiskey that had Metallica played to it while it finished. You know what I'm saying? So that's interesting, for sure. I think I got one more in me tonight, and then I should probably call it. Please don't be high ABV, because I'm not sure if I can handle it. 92. It's middle of the road. I think we can handle it. I'm not going to go overboard, though. I'm not finishing most of these. There's still a lot left in these vials. It is important to know your own limitations, and you never want to get to a point where you can't actually appreciate the work that went into making these whiskeys. Number 16. So again, this is 92 proof. A little bit of a campfire nose. I can tell you 100% this is not bourbon. I'll tell you that right now. That's not bourbon, that's not Irish. Malt, campfire, nose, almost like you just fired up a charcoal grill. But underneath all that sort of campfire burny nose, that roasty nose, there's also some light fruits in there too. A little bit of apricot, somewhat of a floral quality to it too underneath all that. But you kind of have to work at it to get that from underneath the campfire. But it's definitely there. A little bit of honey under there too. Sort of an underlying sweetness to it. Let's go in on it. You definitely get that sweet apricot right up front. Like just those canned apricots. You know, when I was growing up, a lot of times on the weekends, my parents would take me over to my grandparents' house, and I would do chores for my grandpa in the morning. That's how I would spend my mornings on the weekends, like a Saturday morning. I was doing chores for my grandpa, and when we would come back in from the yard to sit down at it wasn't the dining room table, it's like this like smaller table up in the corner by a window, and my grandma would bring us canned apricots as a snack, you know, before lunch. That's what this reminds me of on the front end. And that's the good news. The bad news is you go from that sweet apricot and then it progresses to that sort of campfire, peaty sort of a note. But then it finishes, and I'm really searching for a better word for it that isn't offensive. But it finishes kind of funky, like, I'm going to regret saying this, dirt. Like, I'm trying to find a better word for it. But there's a difference. I mean, you know what peat is, right? Like, peat is what will ultimately become coal in a couple million years. It is this dead vegetation that gets condensed under the water, you know, and compacted. So it is kind of gross stuff, but they use it because it burns well. They use it to, stoke those fires when they toast those grains, and that's okay, because you're not actually getting the taste of the peat. You're just getting the smoke of the peat. But then beyond that, that's sort of the middle of this experience on this whiskey. But it ends not like the smoke of the peat. It ends kind of like this dirty bog water. I feel so mean saying that. But I don't like the finish on that. I like it up front. Those sweet apricots, that sort of burst of bright fruit flavor up front, I like that a lot. And I love I honestly really like Islay scotches. I love those peated scotches. One of my favorite scotches on the market is, the Caol distillery. They just make such a wonderfully peated scotch, and I think it is just beautiful and vibrant, and I adore it. But this ain't it. That one, Caol, those Islay scotches, they finish with that peat, that campfire, in a bright fruity dance, and it's just beautiful. This does not finish like that. This hits that note in the middle, and then it ends on just sort of a dirty note to me. Like, there's a point at which I just want to stop it and be like, yeah, right there, cut it off right there. But the end of it, I'm not crazy about. Let's see what it is. Oh, it wants me to compare it to the Comet single malt, the Indian single malt. This one's slightly less offensive to my palate. It wants me to compare it to Breckenridge. I'd take Breckenridge 10 out of 10 times. It wants me to compare it to Fistful of Bourbon. 10 out of 10 times. I'd take that bourbon, baby. Nydal Indian single malt whiskey. There's a trend here. No, I feel like I'm so sorry if I have any Indian viewers. I do not care for this. So far, the two I've disliked the most have been Indian single malts, and I am sorry for it. My personal palate says no thank you for some reason. It says tasting notes, tropical fruits. I got that bright fruity, beginning of it. It says salty, smooth, rich, sweet, smoky, medicinal. Definitely got a little bit of that smoke. That campfire was there. A limited Indian single malt that carries the flavors of the ocean, translating as the elixir of life from Sanskrit. Oh, man. I feel bad, you read about these distilleries and the amount of care and effort and love that went into this, and I do have to apologize. I never want to be offensive to anybody, but I just do not like this. Covers all of the oceans and coastal areas. This unique Indian single malt is sourced from a coastal Indian distillery, and the nose and palate confirm it too. Aromas of sea salt and tropical fruits and fruity flavors and phenols, ending in sweet vanilla. It does not end in sweet vanilla for me personally. Well, that's all I'm going to do today, is to get through 16 there. I think the winners today were the Balcones American Single Malt, the Lineage Texas Single Malt Whiskey. That one to me was a definite winner. I really liked it. And the Noble Oak Rye Whiskey from the Edrington group, Macallan. Their rye whiskey, that was delicious too. I liked that one quite a bit. If I had to pick one, it's funny because you've got a Texas, like single malt whiskey, kind of like a Scotch, right? But then you've got a Scottish distillery doing a American rye whiskey, and those are the top two today. It's funny. They're sort of trading spots there. But those would be my top two for the day. If I had to pick just one, that is really tough, but I think I'd have to go with the Lineage Texas single malt. But both that and the Noble Oak were delicious, just absolutely delightful. So if you're looking at the vials, that would be 13 and 12, 12 and 13, 12 and 13. Oh, that's this one. This is the Noble Oak, 13. That's the one that tasted like Werther's. Alright, let me know in the comments section what you thought about any of these. If any of them stood out to you for any reason, you loved it, you hated it, or anywhere in between. I love chatting whiskey with you guys. If you want to check out the Patreon, make sure you click the link in the description and the pinned comment to get involved over there. We're having wonderful discussions every day. And in fact, I've actually picked up a couple of bottles because of recommendations that I've gotten on the Patreon. So if you want to recommend a bottle to me or you want to sponsor a bottle, make sure you check that out. Would love to chat with you. I've been thoroughly enjoying the discussions over there. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. And thanks to the patrons.